So at this point, we're going to just go ahead and start sanding. Basically, we're just trying to blend everything and get any of the grind lines to come out. I start with a really heavy grit sandpaper, 80 grit, just to kind of get everything blended so we don't see any of those lines where we cut in. I don't like to have any plunge lines on chef knives. Just lots and lots and lots of elbow grease at this point. So we fast forward a little bit, we see that all those plunge lines are gone. It's a nice smooth transition, and the knife's really starting to take shape here. So we're at 120 grit sandpaper now. We're still prior to heat treat, so the metal's soft. I like to move through the heavy grits when the metal's still soft. It's really hard to get them out, all the scratches out once you've heat treated. So you'll notice I'm going at a slight angle here. And this helps me to know when I've really removed all of the 80 grit scratches. It really helps get a fine finish in the end. So I've been going at it with the 120 for a while, and now you can see how the 80 grit still can show up when you still see the lines in a different direction. You kind of have to move around to get the light just right, because you'll notice that when you look at the knife from a distance, it looks great, but when you get in and you get the right reflection on it, you start to see the scratches going in the opposite direction. And when you find them, you just go back to it, and you just keep going back, back, back until no more of those 80 grit scratches remain. So we can see I've gone back to it a few times and we see that they're gone now. But as we keep scanning the knife, you usually start to find them in a couple other locations. I really try and go through it with a fine tooth comb, and if we start looking real close up in here, I can start to see a few popping out. I see a little bit up near that hole there, and some of that's going to be covered by the handle, but then I see a few down low. Right in there, we can see a couple of little 80 grit scratches still, and they're real small, but as you move past 120, they start to really pop when you get the higher shine. So I'll go back to the 120 and keep hitting that spot until it looks nice and uniform, just like the rest of this. Once we get through the 120, I don't go much further with the hand sanding. At this point, I move into the heat treat, and the thing is you could go farther if you want, but after heat treat, the thing is a sooty mess, and you just have to resand all of the stuff that you just did. So for heat treat, I've just made a small forge with blowtorch, and these are actually pizza oven bricks. You let that thing preheat. You got to get it nice and hot. Usually you got to let it sit in the forge for about 10 minutes or so before it starts getting up. Then I start to get it into the flame here, and I turn the lights down in the garage. The color that you're seeing here isn't a really good match to what you're seeing in actuality. The camera, the colors of red that you're seeing don't work. You'll notice I'm putting a magnet on it there. Basically, the magnet helps me determine the temperature. So you're getting to the right temperature when the steel loses its magnetism, and you want to go a little bit higher. Once you get a nice even heat, we quench it. High carbon steels, for the most part, they work well in canola oil. You can buy more expensive quench fluids for different types of metals, things like Parks 50 and stuff, but the canola oil just works fantastic. And so you just need to preheat it a little bit. So I heat it up to about 140 degrees before I quench. It actually thins the oil down so it disperses the heat more quickly. but we quench it. That is now going to be rock solid hard, and it's too hard. If I was to drop the blade on the ground at this point, it'd probably shatter. And so once we've got it cooled down, I'll put it in an oven and we temper it, and that brings the hardness down a little bit. So it's still going to be extremely hard, but not so brittle. And at that point, we'll go back to sanding, and you'll see here that when I turn the lights back on, now that it's been heat treated, the blade is ugly. See all the work we did. We've got to sand all of this soot and scale off, and that's okay. So we'll go back to it. I'll start at the 120 where I left off, and I will keep sanding through this thing all the way up, usually through 1,000. So lots and lots of sanding.